Hello everyone, this is Wasim from Edureka and I welcome you all to this session where I'll be talking about Python Decorator. So without wasting any more time, let's take a look at the agenda for this session. So first of all, I will start with the prerequisites that are Python functions, and then I will talk about Python decorators with a few examples. And finally, I will discuss a rather complex concept that is fancy decorators with a few examples as well. I hope you guys are clear with the agenda. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials and press the bell icon to get the latest updates from Edureka. So without wasting any more time, let's start our session. I'm sure most of you are familiar with functions in Python. So let's recall some of the important concepts that are going to be useful while working with the decorators. So the concepts that I want to discuss are first class objects and inner functions. So in Python, literally everything is treated as an object, including all the data types and even functions. So the functions can be passed around as arguments as well. So that is why it is called a first class object. Coming on to the inner functions, a function can be also declared in another function which is known as an inner function. It also resonates around the decorator, so we'll get to that later on in the session. So let's take it up to PyCharm and understand how inner functions work, and we will also try to return a function from a function, which is actually passing a function as an argument. So let's take it up to PyCharm, guys. So now that we are in the PyCharm, let me go to the presentation mode so that the clarity will be better. So first of all, let me talk about the first class object. So I'll just take a function, name it as, let's say, function1, and inside this I'm going to pass a variable name. So now I just want to return, let's say, hello. So for this I'm going to use the string interpolation. If you're not sure about that, please do check out the tutorial on strings on Edureka so that you will be familiar with what I'm doing here. That is the string interpolation. You'll see what it does. Now let me define one more function. Let's say define function number 2, and inside this I'm going to pass the same argument, that is name. And now I'm going to return using the string interpolation again. So after this I actually want to ask how you doing. I have to give 2 lines over here. This should do. And now I want to take one more function, guys. So I'll name it as function number 3, and inside this I'm going to pass function as an argument. So here I just want to return function number 4, and inside this, let's say I want to write dear learner. Now when I print this, I'm going to print function number 3, and inside this I'm going to pass function, that is function number 1. Now again I'm going to pass function number, let's say, 3, and inside this I'm going to pass the function number 2 again. Let's see what the output is. Okay, we have an error, guys. Function 2 is missing one required positional argument, name. So we have made a mistake over here. So when I print this now, I'm getting the output as hello dear learner and dear learner, how you doing? So I'm actually able to pass the functions as arguments. So that is actually how we use the first class object. We can use anything as an object in Python. Now moving on to the next example that I'm going to show you is for inner functions. So how exactly do you use inner functions? So I'm going to take one function, let's say func, and inside this I'm going to define one more function. So first of all, let me give it a statement. I'll say first function, and after this I'm going to define one more function, and this is going to be function number 2, or I'll just write it as function number 1. And after this I'm going to give one more statement over here, let's say first child function. Now I'm going to go define one more function, let's say function number 2, and inside this I am going to print, let's say, second child function. And let me take one more statement, so function 2 and function 1. Now when I print our function over here, let's see what the output is. So first of all, we are getting first function, that is the base function, and then we are getting the child function and the first child function. So this is how you can use inner functions in Python. Basically it's a nested function. We are using multiple functions inside a function. So we have one function over here, and inside this we have 2 more child functions. So this is a basic example of inner functions, and Python decorators is going to revolve around this concept a lot, the first class objects and inner functions. That is why I was telling you about this. I'm going to show you one more example. So I'm going to return a function from a function. So basically what it means is I am taking a function as an argument for another function. So what I'll do is I'll just write function and define one function. Over here I'll just write n, and now I'm going to define one more function, let's say function number 1. So I'm going to return, let's say Edureka. Yes. And now I'm going to take one more function, let's say function number 2. And inside this function, I am going to return, let's say Python. And now let me take a statement, guys. So if n is equal to, let's say 1. So I'm going to return function number 1. I'll not use this. I'll tell you about this later. Else, I am going to return function 2. So this is my function, guys. Inside this I have 2 more functions. I'll show you what it does. So I have a is equal to function, and inside this I'll write 1, and now again inside this I'll write, let's say 2. So now when I print a, and let's say I want to print b as well, you'll see what the output is. Okay, we have name b is not defined, so actually I had to take b over here. So the output is Edureka and Python. So I'm successfully able to return a function from a function, guys. So I've taken these 2 functions as arguments, and this is how we can return a function from a function. So now that we are through with the Python prerequisites, we'll talk about decorators in Python. A decorator is a design pattern in Python that allows a user to add new functionality to an existing object without modifying its structure. So decorators are usually called before the definition of a function you want to decorate. Let's take a simple example to understand how it works. So we'll go to PyCharm again. I'll clear this off. And okay, let me just put it right here. Now I'm going to take a simple decorator example. So I'll just define a function. Yes. And inside this, let's say I want to pass a function as an argument. I'll name it as function 1. Now again, I'm going to define a wrapper function. This is my inner function, guys, and this is basically the decorator that I'm going to use here. I'm going to pass function again, so you'll see what it does, and I'm going to print one more statement after this. So let's just say welcome to Python Edureka tutorial. Now I'm going to return wrapper over here, and I'm going to define one more function, and inside this function number 2 I am going to use a print statement, let's say Pythonista, and let's just call a function now. Function number, let's say 2 is equal to function 1 function 2. So this is a very important statement, guys. Now I'm just going to call the function number 2. Let's see what the output is. So my output is hello Pythonista, welcome to Python Edureka tutorial. So as you can see inside the wrapper function over here, first of all we are getting hello. After that, the function which we have right here, this one, function number 2, which we have passed in function number 1. So this is my wrapper statement, guys. There is another approach to this using a Py syntax, or we can call it a syntactic sugar as well. So it basically makes it easier to use decorators in Python, guys. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make a few changes in this code and you will understand what I have done. So after this statement, that is return wrapper. Okay, let me clear all this. I can just write @ function number 1, and now I'll just define my next function, that is function number 2. And over here I'll just print Pythonista. And now when I call my function number 2, the output is going to be same. So as you can see, the output is same, which is hello Pythonista, welcome to Python Edureka tutorial. So what I have changed here is I have changed this over here. So I've used this Py syntax, or you can call it a syntactic sugar as well. It makes your job easier. So this is how you can use a simple decorator in your functions, guys. So now let's try to understand the concept of decorators in Python with a few more examples. So I'm going to take a program inside which I'm going to specify a decorator with arguments. So I'll just take function number 1, and inside this I'm going to pass function again. Now I'm going to define my wrapper function inside which I will have arguments. So earlier I didn't have arguments over here. but now I'm going to have arguments inside this decorator. So I'm going to print hello again like I did in the last program, and I'm going to call the function again. So inside this I'm going to use the arguments as well, and after this I'm going to print the same statement that was welcome to Edureka Python tutorial, and I will return wrapper. After this I will use the syntactic sugar. Function number 1 I'll write, and after this I'll define my function number 2, and over here I'll write the print statement. Let's say, alright, we can use our argument over here as well, and we'll use the string interpolation again. Yeah, when I print function number 2, I'm going to specify a name as well. Let's say Wasim. Now my output is, okay, we have a error which is function 1 is not defined. So basically this, we have made a mistake over here. Now it should work fine. So we have hello Wasim, welcome to Edureka Python tutorial. So this is a very simple example, guys. So we have actually used arguments in our decorator. Let's take a look at the next function that we have. So I'm going to use a function in which I'm going to return values from a decorated function. So I'll just define a function number 1, and inside this I'll pass function again, and now I'll define a wrapper function with a few arguments, let's say, and after this it's going to work the same way like we did. So I'm going to write print, let's say it worked, so it will show us that it worked. I'll return wrapper, and after this I will have that same syntactic sugar, function 1, and I'll define my function number 2 here, pass name over here, and I'll write print string interpolation get name, and now when I print, let's say function number 2 with name, let's say Python, so what is the output that we are getting? It's showing it worked. So now that we are through with the decorator examples, let's talk about fancy decorators in Python. They're nothing but the complex features of decorators in Python, and to explain this I'm going to take a few examples like class decorator, and let's talk about them one by one. So we are making a reference here so that we can use it for various purposes in the future as well. So we are not using the parenthesis over here because we're making a reference to this function. So I'll clear this up and we'll talk about the class decorators now. So there are two ways to decorate a class in Python. The first one is where you can decorate the methods inside a class, and there are built-in decorators like class method, static method, and property in Python. So class method and static method define methods inside a class that is not connected to any other instance of a class. And property is normally used to customize the getters and setters of a class attribute. So let's take an example to understand this. So I'll take a class, I'll make it a more relatable. So I'll not use functions. Instead, I'll use, let's say, square. And for my class over here, I'm going to define few functions. So first of all, I'm going to define an init function, and inside of self I'm using one more variable, that is side. Now self dot side is equal to side, and I'm going to add a property over here. So this is going to be my decorator, guys. So this is going to be my decorator. It's a built-in operator, guys. I'll show you what it does. So I'm going to define one more function named as, let's say, side, and inside this I'm going to pass self, and now again I'm going to return self side, and I'm going to use one more. So this is my setter function, guys, and now inside this I'm going to use a side function, and after this I'm going to use the value. So if value is greater than equal to 0, I am going to get the side is equal to value, else I'm going to print that there is one error over here. And now again I'm going to use property, and over here I'm going to define area self again, and inside this I'm going to return the area. So I'm going to use self dot side, and I'm sure everyone must be familiar with what is the area of a square, that is side square. So I'm using a double exponentiation operator over there, which is used to calculate the square. So if I make it as 3, it's going to be a cube, but we don't need that, so I'm just going to leave it at 2. Now I'm going to define a class method, and it is going to have one more function, let's say unit square, and inside this let's have one more variable cls, and now I'm going to return 1. We are done with the class, which has all these functions and built-in class decorators like property, class, method, and setter and getter, all those. So I'm going to have square over here. I'm going to specify the side as 5. Now let's say what my side is. Yes, and I'm going to print the area as well. So when I do this, my output is 5 and 25. Now, sometimes it's useful to have a decorator that can keep a track of state. So let's take a few more examples to explain decorators in Python in detail. So I'm going to make a singleton class using class decorators. So first of all, I'll import func tools, and after this, I'm going to define a singleton class. So name is as singleton. Now after that, I am going to use the function tools dot wraps inside this cls. Now comes the wrapper function, and inside this I'm going to have a few arguments as well. And after this, I'm going to get the instance is equal to cls args and chaos. I'm going to return wrapper again, making a reference to the function and not calling it, but I'm going to use this to make an wrapper dot instance. Okay, we're making a small error over here. Now I'll just write wrapper dot instance is equal to none. Now I'm going to return wrapper again. After this I have a singleton, and after this I'll have class 1. I'm going to pass, and let's say first is equal to 1, and let's say second is equal to 1 as well, and I'm going to print first is second. So let's see if we get true or false. Am I getting a error, guys? Alright, I have made a mistake over here. I had to add a if statement. That's why we're getting this error, guys. And after this, it should work fine now. So it is actually true. And we know that a singleton class only has one instance, and there are plenty of singletons in Python, including true, none, etc. So now that we are done with making a singleton class, I want to talk about nesting decorators. So in a function, you can actually use nested decorators as well. So I'll show you the syntax for that. So basically what you can do is you'll just write function 1, and you can write function 2, but you have to define all those before that you use. After that, you can just define a function name and print whatever you want. You can use multiple decorators by stacking them on top of each other. And now let's take an example in which I'm going to take arguments in a decorator. So for that, I am going to import function tools, and after this I will define a function, let's say repeat, and inside this I'll write number. Now again I'll write one more function, let's say decorator repeat, and after this I will pass a function inside this, and now I will make one decorator, let's say func tools dot wraps. Inside this I will pass function, and I'll define one more wrap function over here, and inside this I will pass a few arguments. Now for in range number value is equal to, I'm going to return value after this, and return wrapper, making not using the parenthesis again, and after this I'm going to return decorator repeat, and again not using the parenthesis. Now we make our decorator, let's say repeat. Inside this I'll specify the number itself, let's say 5. After this I'll define a function, and inside this I'll pass name. Using the string interpolation we will have a name again, so let's just say I want to print my name again, or I can use Python as well. So I'll just write Python over here. Now when I run this, there should not be any errors. So I'm getting it as Python as 4 times. So instead I can use 4 over here. I'll get it 4 times. So this is my repeat function. So I'm using it as an argument 2 times also. We can use it for 20 times as well. So it is always useful to pass an argument in a decorator. And now that we have come to the end of the session, I hope the concepts covered in this tutorial are clear to you guys. And if you have any questions, you can mention them in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Edureka for more exciting tutorials. And also press the bell icon to get the latest updates from Edureka. Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!